You're sitting at dinner with your closest friends. The bill arrives and someone suggests splitting it evenly. You ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and had water. Your friend ordered 3 cocktails, an appetizer, the lobster, and dessert. You do the mental math. Your meal was $28. Your share of the split bill is $73. You smile, nod, and hand over your card because saying something would make you look cheap. Congratulations. You just paid a $45 tax for having friends. This isn't a one-time thing, this is systematic. Wealth extraction disguised as social harmony. And if you think I'm being dramatic, let's talk about what this pattern actually cost you over a lifetime. My name is Nick, and I've spent an uncomfortable amount of time calculating the financial damage inflicted by the people who supposedly care about you most. Not because they're bad people, but because nobody talks about how friendship operates like a subscription service you never agreed to. The average American spends over $4,000 per year on social obligations. Weddings, birthday dinners, drinks after work, weekend trips, group gifts, bachelor parties, baby showers. These aren't luxuries you chose. These are social taxes levied by your peer group, and the penalty for non-payment is exclusion. You can't opt out without becoming that person. So you pay up month after month, wondering why your savings account looks anemic despite making decent money. Let's start with the most predatory social construct ever invented, the destination of bachelor. Party, your buddy from college is getting married. Great. He's decided the appropriate way to celebrate is a 4-day trip to Miami, Nashville, or Vegas. You don't want to go, you know you can't afford to go, but 12 other guys are going and you've known this person since freshman year. So what are you supposed to do? You book the flight, $400, split the Airbnb, $300. Dinner every night because you're celebrating, $200 drinks because that's the entire point, apparently. $300 activities cover. Charges and a group gift. Another $200. You just spent $1,400 to watch someone you see twice a year get embarrassingly drunk in a city you didn't want to visit. But wait, the wedding hasn't even happened yet. That's another $500 for travel and accommodations plus the gift. Let's call it $200 if you're being generous, $100 if you're being realistic about your budget. Suddenly, one friend's life decision has cost you over $2,000 and you're supposed to be happy about it. Now multiply this across your social circle. If you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you're hitting peak wedding season. That's 4 to 6 weddings per year if you're remotely social. Even if you skip the bachelor parties, which brands you as a bad friend, you're still looking at $3,000 to $4,000 annually, just to watch people you barely keep in touch with make promises they have a 50% chance of keeping. The math gets worse when you factor in birthday dinners. Someone in your friend group has a birthday every single month. That's 12 mandatory dinners where you're expected to subsidize someone else's celebration. The birthday person doesn't pay. Obviously, that cost gets split among everyone else. You show up thinking you'll grab a burger and a beer, $40 tops, but the birthday person ordered champagne for the table. Someone else suggested appetizers. Now you're in for $85 before tip. Do this monthly and you've spent over $1,000 per year celebrating the fact that your friend successfully orbited the sun. Then there's the lifestyle creep that happens when one person in the group upgrades their life. Your friend buys a boat, not your problem, right? Wrong, because now there are boat days. You need to bring premium beer, not the cheap stuff. You need to chip in for gas because apparently boats consume fuel like a small aircraft. You need appropriate boat shoes, which is somehow a real category of footwear that costs money. One person's boat becomes everyone's financial burden. Or someone in your group gets really into wine. Suddenly, casual hangouts at someone's apartment turn into wine tasting events where everyone's expected to bring a bottle that costs more than $15. You were fine with boxed wine. Boxed wine is a technological marvel that keeps wine fresh and reduces packaging waste, but now you're browsing the wine section like you're studying for an exam, trying to find something that won't get you mocked, but won't destroy your budget. The sneakiest wealth drain is the group trip. It always starts innocently. Someone says, wouldn't it be fun if we all went somewhere together? Yes, in theory, but group trips are where friendships go to reveal their true financial hierarchies. One couple wants the nice hotel. You were thinking hostel or maybe a budget Airbnb. Someone wants to eat at actual restaurants for every meal. You were planning to hit a grocery store. The group operates at the spending level of its wealthiest member. And everyone else quietly goes into debt trying to keep pace. What makes this so insidious is that it's completely invisible. Nobody sends you an invoice labeled friendship tax. It's 1,000 small decisions where saying no feels worse than saying yes. It's death by 1,000 brunches. Each individual expense seems reasonable in isolation, but they compound into a pattern that keeps you broke while making you feel like you're living a full social life. And here's what really bothers me about this whole system. Other people pushing these expensive social norms the hardest are often the ones who can least afford it. They're not rich, they're just better at hiding their credit card debt. They've bought into the idea that experiences equal happiness, which is true, but somehow that philosophy always involves spending money at restaurants, bars, and tourist destinations rather than free activities that might actually create better memories. There's a psychological trap at work here that most people never identify. When you spend money in a group setting, it doesn't feel like spending. It feels like participating. The pain of payment gets diluted across the social experience. Your brain codes it as fun, not as expense. This is why people who are ruthlessly frugal in their personal lives will hemorrhage cash in social situations without blinking. The social reward overrides the financial pain, and you wake up 3 days later wondering where $200 went. What's fascinating is how this pattern varies based on your peer group's collective financial literacy, or lack thereof. I've watched friend groups implode because half the group figured out this math and started declining invitations while the other half took it personally and accused them of being cheap or no longer caring about the friendship. That's how effective the social spending trap is. It's designed to make financial responsibility look like social betrayal, but understanding the mechanism is just step one. The real question is what you actually do about it without becoming a hermit who eats ramen alone every night. Because I'm not suggesting you abandon your friends, I'm suggesting you stop letting your friends accidentally bankrupt you. And that requires a completely different approach to social spending that almost nobody is willing to implement because it requires the one thing our culture hates more than being broke. It requires saying no. The first step is recognizing that friendship and spending are not the same thing, which sounds obvious until you realize your entire social life is built around transactions. Every hangout has a price tag. Every memory comes with a receipt. We've normalized this to such an extreme degree that suggesting a free activity makes you sound like you're planning a poverty roleplay experience. Here's a framework that actually works, but it requires you to be the person who changes the dynamic, and that's uncomfortable. You have to become the friend who suggests the alternative. When someone proposes the expensive restaurant, you counter with a picnic in the park. When they want the pricey concert, you suggest a house party with a great playlist. When they're booking the luxury Airbnb, you advocate for the camping trip. You will feel like the cheap friend. You will worry people think you're broke or boring. But something interesting happens when you consistently offer alternatives instead of just declining invitations. Some people will appreciate it more than you expect, actually, because you're not the only one silently stressing about money. You're just the only one willing to say it out loud. There's a specific script I recommend for this, and it's brutally honest in a way that makes people uncomfortable, which is exactly why it works. When the group is planning something expensive, you say this: I want to hang out with you all, but I can't justify spending that much right now. Okay, I'd rather do something cheaper so I can actually relax and enjoy it instead of stressing about my bank account the whole time. Is anyone else open to a different plan? Notice what this does. It's not "I'm too poor," which invites pity. It's not "that sounds boring anyway," which sounds defensive. It's a clear statement of values. I value this friendship enough to suggest an alternative rather than just disappearing. And critically, it opens the door for others who feel the same way but were too scared to speak up. You will lose some friends over this. Let's be honest about that. There are people whose entire friendship is built on shared spending. And if you stop spending, the friendship evaporates. That stings, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Those weren't real friendships. They were economic alliances disguised as social bonds. A real friend cares about your presence, not your purchasing power. If someone stops inviting you because you can't afford their lifestyle, they're not your friend. They're your customer, and you just stop buying. Now, let's talk about the subtler version of this trap, because it's not always about expensive outings. Sometimes it's the gift economy, and this one destroys people slowly. Birthdays, holidays, weddings, baby showers, the expectation that every life event requires a financial tribute. And the amount keeps inflating because nobody wants to be the person who brings the cheap gift. I've watched people spend $50 on a birthday gift for someone they see twice a year because that's just what you do. Multiply that across a social circle of 20 people, and you're spending $1,000 a year on obligatory gift giving to maintain relationships that might not even survive the year. The wedding industrial complex deserves its own category of financial violence. You're expected to buy a gift, often from a registry where the cheapest item is $80. You're expected to attend the bachelor or bachelorette party, which now apparently requires a weekend trip to another city. You're expected to look good, which means new clothes. If you're in the wedding party, you're expected to pay for your own dress or tux that you'll never wear again. The average wedding guest spends somewhere between $300 to $700 per wedding when you add it all up. And if you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you might be attending 5 weddings a year. That's not celebrating love. That's a subscription service you never agreed to. Here's what nobody tells you. You can just not go. You can decline the invitation. You can send a card with a heartfelt note and $0 attached. The guilt you feel about this is manufactured. It's not real. The bride and groom will survive without you. They might even prefer it because it lowers their catering costs. We've created this social obligation matrix where attending events you can't afford is considered more important than your actual financial stability. And that's insane. The psychology behind why this is so hard to escape comes down to something called social proof. We determine what's normal by looking at what everyone else is doing. If everyone around you is spending money on social activities, your brain interprets that as the correct behavior. To deviate from that feels like failure, like you're falling behind, like you're the one who doesn't have their life together. But what if everyone around you is also quietly broke, also stressing, also wondering how to escape? You're all performing financial stability for each other while individually panicking in private. That restaurant nobody can actually afford, but everyone keeps suggesting. Everyone's hopping someone else will suggest something cheaper, but nobody wants to be the one who looks broke by speaking up first. You're in a Mexican standoff of fake affluence. It's a collective delusion and someone has to be the first to break it. There's one more layer to this that's particularly cruel, and it's how social media amplifies everything. You're not just competing with your actual friends anymore. You're competing with the curated highlight reel of everyone you've ever met. You see the vacation photos, the restaurant check-ins, the concert stories. Your brain doesn't process those as isolated moments. It processes them as evidence that everyone else is living a full, rich, expensive life and you're missing out. FOMO isn't just a cute acronym. It's a financial weapon that drains your account while making you feel like you're just trying to keep up with normal. But here's the thing about those posts. You're seeing the front stage performance, not the backstage panic. You're seeing the dinner, not the credit card statement that arrived 3 weeks later. You're seeing the engagement ring, not the payment plan. You're seeing the new car, not the 7-year loan at 9% interest. Social media is a financial horror movie where everyone's pretending to be rich and you're the only one who thinks it's real. So, how do you actually escape this without becoming a hermit who eats ramen alone in the dark? Because that's the fear, right? That opting out of social spending means opting out of having a life, of having friends, of being a normal human being who does things. Let me give you the framework that actually works. And well, it starts with something uncomfortable. You need to have the conversation not with all your friends at once, not as some grand announcement, but individually with the people who actually matter. The next time someone suggests an expensive dinner and you can't afford it, instead of making up an excuse about being busy, try this. Say, I'm trying to be more intentional with my money right now, but I'd love to hang out. Want to do something cheaper? Watch what happens. 90% of the time, your real friends will say yes immediately and suggest alternatives. They might even thank you for saying it first because they were stressed about the cost to the 10% who react poorly, who make you feel bad for not spending money. Those aren't your friends. Those are people who need an audience for their consumption and you just resigned from the job. Start suggesting the alternatives yourself. Instead of waiting for someone else to plan the expensive thing and then trying to back out, be the person who texts first. Hey, want to grab coffee this weekend? Not the $15 artisanal pour-over situation, just regular coffee. Want to come over and cook dinner together? You'd be amazed how many people are relieved when someone else suggests the low-cost option. You're not being cheap. You're giving permission for everyone to stop performing. Create what I call spending boundaries and communicate them clearly. If you've decided you're spending a maximum of $50 a month on social activities, that's your budget. When you hit that number, you're done for the month. This isn't deprivation. This is having a plan. And when you have to decline something because you've hit your limit, you can say exactly that. I've already hit my social budget for this month, but let's plan something for next month. People respect boundaries when they're stated clearly and without apology. And here's the crucial step that makes the sacrifice worth it. Take the money you would have spent on that obligation and put it in a savings account labeled Freedom Fund. Watch it grow. Every time you're tempted to say yes to something expensive just to fit in, look at that account. Remind yourself, every dollar you don't spend on social signaling is a dollar that buys you options. It buys you the option to quit a job you hate. It buys you the option to take a month off if you burn out. Ask yourself, would I rather have this dinner or would I rather have options? The dinner is temporary. The freedom is permanent. Recognize that your friend group might change and that's okay. Some friendships are built entirely on shared consumption. You go shopping together, you try new restaurants together, you travel together. If those activities are the only glue holding the relationship together, removing them reveals there was no real foundation. It stings, but it's also clarifying. The friendships that survive your financial boundaries are the ones worth keeping. Those are the people who like you, not your willingness to spend money around them. Now let's talk about the wedding situation specifically because this one traps people hard. You don't owe anyone a weekend bachelor party trip to Nashville. You don't owe anyone a $300 registry gift. What you owe people who matter to you is genuine care and support, which can be expressed in ways that don't destroy your budget. Send a thoughtful card. Offer to help with something specific that doesn't cost money, like setting up the venue or watching their dog during the honeymoon. Show up to the ceremony if you can. Skip the reception if the gift expectation is too high. The people getting married are so overwhelmed with their own stress that they will barely notice your absence, and if they do notice and hold it against you, refer back to the previous point about friendships built on consumption. Here's something that might sound radical. You can have a rich social life for almost no money if you're willing to put in slightly more effort than opening an app and hitting reserve table. Free events exist everywhere. Parks, hiking trails, museums with free days, community festivals, board game nights at your house. The reason we default to expensive social activities isn't because cheap alternatives don't exist. It's because expensive activities require zero creativity or planning. You just show up and swipe your card. But the activities you actually remember, the ones that create real connection, are almost never the expensive ones. Nobody tells stories about that time they went to a mid-tier restaurant. They tell stories about the time they got lost hiking, or the board game that turned into a 4-hour competition, or the potluck where someone's dish caught fire. The ultimate realization is this: your real friends want to see you, not your credit limit. If someone's friendship is contingent on your ability to spend money in their presence, you're not friends. You're their entertainment budget and you deserve better than that. Cut the people who make you feel poor for having boundaries. Keep the ones who suggest the walk in the park. Your bank account will recover and your stress levels will drop and you'll discover something surprising. You're actually happier spending time with people who don't require you to perform financial stability you don't have. Turns out connection doesn't have a price tag. It just took you getting broke enough to figure that out.